ask Malcolm Nance, because he's a former spy and the author of The Plot to Hack America. Hey, Malcolm.
Very hard for people to want to stay out of the game. And many of us do. Many go on to other lucrative and successful careers. However, we're talking not about, just a Western person. We're talking about an ex-KGB officer. Actually, not KGB.
GRU.
He was Russian military intelligence.
Yeah,
That's
he was
right.
GRU.
Which is, their version of Defense Intelligence Agency and, the Army, Air Force, Navy intelligence. But they have espionage duties. And under the Soviet Union, GRU officers were deeply involved with activities closely related to the KGB. That being said, in Putin's world, when he left the KGB and became the enforcer of the city of St. Petersburg, one of the rules that he enacted in order to gain control of the mafia was that everyone he was associated with, even today, when he created oligarchs, they all had to have an ex-KGB, GRU, or SVR, that's their new external intelligence agency, on their staff. You could not be a billionaire without a former spy who was loyal to Putin somewhere very close to you.
Well,
so to find this guy in the middle of the meeting, even though he's an American citizen now, and a lobbyist.
He's got dual citizenship. He's a lobbyist who never registered as a foreign agent. And what's interesting about that oligarchy job he had, at one of the biggest kleptocracies in Russia, was a company called Prevazon.
Prevazon, that's right.
And so he's working at Prevazon, and so is Natalia. Isn't that something?
Well, you know what I say, Nance's law, right? Coincidence takes a lot of planning.
I keep telling that to my new producer, Scotty Mednick. I keep telling him that Malcolm Nance taught me there are no coincidences in this world.
No, not at all.
So,
and yeah, go on, man.
No, I was just going to say that I was reading this letter that, Charles Grassley in the Senate was very hip to this back in April of 2017. And he wrote a letter, right? He wrote a letter to John Kelly at Homeland Security. And in this letter, he says that Mr. Akhmetshin, a Russian immigrant to the U.S., has admitted being, and they put it in quotes, what he said about his own self. He said that he was a, quote, Soviet counterintelligence officer. In fact, he worked for GRU. And guess what his specialty was, Malcolm?
Oh, yeah. Propaganda and political warfare.
Disinformation, political warfare, and propaganda. He is known as a key pro-Russian political operator. So, his main area of expertise was fake news.
I've been saying this since last year that, certainly since I've written this book, which was last September 23rd, that this investigation is going to have multiple lines of inquiry. Mm-hmm. There is no one dirty tricks team. There will be multiple dirty tricks teams. There is no one co-op.
No, listen, this meeting...
There will be multiple teams.
I know, and I think what Mueller is really looking at, quite frankly, and I think the reason why it's going to take as long as it's going to take is because he's looking at all this money laundering. I mean, Prevazon is a company based out of Cyprus that is controlled by the Russian government, okay? And they were charged with one of the biggest tax frauds in the history of Russia. $230 million was taken out of the Russian treasury, given to this Russian-owned company, and they wrote a good chunk of it off on a guy named Bill Browder's investment company, Hermitage Capital Investment, right?
Right.
Okay. And so
Bill, go ahead. Browder wrote all about this in his book, Red Notice.
And Browder, filed also a complaint, a FARA complaint. The foreign, I think that this show was the first show that ever brought up the fact that if you're lobbying for a foreign government, you have to register as a foreign agent. And I know this because Howard was one of the top 50 lobbyists in Washington, and then he's my significant other. So, when this all started happening, he goes, how are these people lobbying like this without registering? And let me check if they're registered. No one was. Well, Bill Browder got hip to this too. And Bill Browder filed a FARA complaint on Hermitage Capital Management stationery. And in it, he goes through all the cast of characters and what they were trying to do. And in a nutshell, what they were trying to do is, because of the Prevezon case, okay, they were trying to do two things. One, shield the information about where this money was invested in Manhattan condos, which buildings, who owned them. That was what Natalia's job was. Okay, and
Right.
and she was also, they formed this fake NGO in Delaware that was supposed to be all about Russian adoption. But, the Russian adoption problem is Russia's problem, because Putin, enacted a ban on Americans adopting Russian babies, Russian orphans, because that was how he retaliated against the Magnitsky Act. Now, what is the Magnitsky Act? That is what Bill Browder lobbied to have. And what it was he had hired a lawyer/forensic accountant to see why all these write-offs were showing up on his firm in Russia.